Take a trip with us to Nilbog. Just promise not to drink the goo.
Oh my God!
If you get sucked into the Matrix, we will send a phone for you.
Do you believe in fate?
But every movie has a plot hole, and every hole gets filled somehow. Whiskey, wine, or blue milk. Just don't cut me off right now. We're the Plotaholics, a breakfast club of two. We're the Plotaholics, ripping plots apart for you.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome in to another episode of the Plotaholics Podcast. I'm Shane Wilson, and I'm joined, as always, by one Mr. Brian Tan, the one who drinks from metallic cups.
That's right. This is my BMF right here, baby.
That thing probably keeps shit
hot.
super cold. Oh, you must have a hot beverage in there. It
Yeah, I
probably
have
keeps
tea.
whatever you put in there the appropriate
At the proper temperature.
Right.
Bro, I had tea in this thing, and for like 4.5 hours, it was still way too hot for me to sip. Even leaving the little thing open.
I use my similar beverage container for cold beverages, and those it stays cold. Like I wake up the next day with ice still in that thing, and I live in just the devil's asshole of the southeastern United States.
Yeah, you are about in the devil's anus, that's for sure. And it's not just a fancy title.
We're anus adjacent. But at any rate, Mr. Tan, this week, the Summer of Song continues with a 2019 film, Blinded by the Light.
And this is a movie that I feel so terrible that fell beneath my radar because I remember seeing the advertisements for it. I can't remember. I think I'd gone to the movies. Yeah. And I'd seen the advertisements for it. And I was like, oh my God, I want to see this. I really want to see this. And I never
just kind of slipped by a bunch of people. It slipped by all of us, I think.
Yeah. And so I was really, really happy to see that when this came up. And I was like, all right, what the hell is this? And then I saw it. And I was like, this is that movie I wanted to see that time. And this movie is, oh man. Let me slice off a little bit of a tanopsis.
Let's get that tanopsis going.
All right, so this film, Blinded by the Light, follows young Javed, who lives in a traditional Pakistani family in England during the Margaret Thatcher era of England. I'm sorry, the UK. And he's looking for a voice. He's a writer, and he's all into it, but he doesn't have his own voice. And then he is blinded by the light when he discovers the boss, the man, the myth, the legend. That is the Bruce Aloysius Springsteen. That young Jewish American boy, according to his father, which is like the funniest. That's one of the funniest, dude. That is the funniest bit his dad goes with.
Right.
Because he was like, you listen to that Jewish boy. He's like, he's not Jewish.
Right. Yeah. I came to Springsteen music later in life. My folks were not huge Springsteen fans because they, Southern country, they grew up on country music. So the rock stuff just wasn't really their vibe. So it wasn't really played in the house as much.
Right.
And so I came around to Bruce Springsteen much later on, and similar to Javed, really fell in love with his lyrics, his lyricism, his narrative, the ability for him to tell a story. The dude is a poet.
He really is.
When you really get into his music, it is incredibly moving and incredibly powerful. And not only that, but Brian, I found myself moved by this movie in a way that I hadn't been moved in a little while.
Same here, actually. And I'll tell you what, I really love, and I'm sorry, we're gonna be hopscotching a lot in
Yeah, no,
this,
that's fine.
but I really love the fact when someone tried to argue with Javed about Bruce Springsteen, and
Yeah.
they tried to use "Born in the USA,"
Hmm.
and my son, because my son watched this with us, so this is him getting a little bit of history about how his
For
dad
sure.
grew up. Because Bruce Springsteen was huge when I was a kid. He was,
Hmm.
I mean, he was on
Well,
the
New England, right? Like
well, I'm
he's
not even,
obviously like
well, I mean,
the freaking poster child for New Jersey.
right. And then being from Pittsburgh, that working class
Absolutely.
Jersey attitude, we sort of gravitate toward.
Yeah.
And I remember as a kid, Born in the USA was so huge, and that really, and then he followed that up with his appearance in the USA for Africa. Crap, why is that name like escaping me? Because we sang the song "We Are the World" because we sang it at
Yeah.
my kindergarten graduation,
Yeah.
and I love his part. We are the world.
Yeah, I mean, like this dude is this
He
is
was
the guy.
everywhere.
You point at this guy whenever everybody's like, well, why does music have to be so political now? Or like, why is everybody, because Bruce Springsteen has never shied away from that fight, right? Like
Right, he's
from
always
the
been
fight for like labor rights
equality,
or
labor rights.
equality or
Yeah.
yeah, like all of that stuff. He's always been very vocal and continues to be very vocal even now.
And you gotta
Um,
love people that sit there and try to say, "Well, why music's gotta be so political?" Bruce has been doing it for over 40 years, dude.
for
Come on,
sure, and
come
he's
on.
great at it, and anybody that I think that his work suffers from a misreading, as a lot of work does,
Like Reagan did.
right? Like
I
Born in
love
the
what they brought that up. I
yeah, Born in
love
the
that.
USA is not a
It's not some pro
pro-American
America.
anthem.
No, it is not. And I even told my son, I was like, Ronald Reagan made that mistake. And he goes, "Who's Ronald Reagan?" And he was like, well, as soon as I started to say Ronald Reagan, he thought I was saying Joe Rogan.
Oh,
It's like,
right.
no, Ronald
No,
Reagan,
different
who's the precursor to Donald Trump in the White House, actually.
in a lot
I
of
mean,
ways.
when you look at a lot of the things that Ronald Reagan did, it is almost the exact same playbook that Donald Trump is on. It's just that he's not as eloquent as
Yeah.
Reagan
Because
is.
Reagan could talk, you know?
Reagan knew how to talk to you. He knew how to make you believe that he was a nice guy when
Yeah.
he really wasn't. And Reagan called himself trying to incorporate Born in the USA in his campaign. And it's like, did you even listen to the lyrics?
Right.
Or are you just going by the chorus?
Yeah, that's it. That's
You
it.
might want to actually listen to it. So Brian goes, well, what was it actually about? And I was trying to watch this. So I basically told him, I was like, it's how a kid goes from being a regular kid who kind of gets into a little bit of trouble, who's forced into a war that he knew nothing about and
Mhm.
wanted nothing to do with, i.e. the Vietnam War,
Yep.
and then made him kill people. And then when he comes home, there's nothing for him.
Yeah.
Like, this song could have been in Rambo First Blood.
For sure. And honestly, so much of his work deals with Vietnam and like forced military service and wars that like unjust wars, all that. Like he does deal with that a lot. And in a lot of ways, I think what makes his music so compelling is that it's about real people and it's about fully realized characters, people
Right.
that he knew or whatever. Right. Like, and so, when like my favorite album of Bruce's is The River, and it's got so many great songs on it. But that song, The River, is about a guy that like is, he gets this girl pregnant and he has to get married to her, and then like he has to punch his like labor ticket and he starts going and working at a construction company. And it's just like all of his stories, all of his songs are about these guys or these people that that are like victim of circumstance, right? And the circumstance being that they were born in this great, quote unquote, great country, and like this country that forgets about those working class people or takes advantage of those working class people like that just become cogs in this bigger machine, be it if they're drafted or if they have to go fight in the military, if they just have to work at the construction company, like whatever, right? It's the forgotten people.
Right. And the thing is, and what really gets me, it's not even so much that they're quote unquote forgotten. It's like, do your part and shut up.
Yeah.
Keep us comfortable and
Yeah.
shut up. The only thing that really, really sucks is that there's been a perfecting of the propaganda to give these forgotten people a boogeyman to hate.
Yeah.
Instead of hating the ones that are doing the actual deed, they're giving them people that don't look like them or don't worship like them or just all in all believe differently from them to hate. And we even see that in this film.
Oh God. Like
that was so difficult. Like Sharon really had to grab my shoulder and ask me if I'm okay.
Yeah, no, it was rough. It was rough. And it was the exact kind of thing that I've wanted from the last few movies that we've talked about that sort of like tiptoed around those issues of race.
Right.
In certain ways, right? I mean, obviously last week Dreamgirls sort of like took it on in a little bit more of a direct way than 8 Mile did.
Right.
And that wasn't 8 Mile's job or anything like that. But I felt
8 Mile's job was to make Eminem look great.
But here, a story about an immigrant family in a time when the country that they've moved to for a new opportunity is particular, like where racists and bigots are feeling particularly enlivened, right?
What does that sound like?
Some of those scenes were really tough. Watching the Pakistani guys have to deal with, and families. I mean, you talked about being all over the place, and here it is, right? Like the march on the wedding day near the end of the film.
That was very difficult to watch. I just felt myself getting so angry.
It was rough.
And what's weird is that Javed is still such a kid.
He is.
That he feels like, because a lot of people are trying to tell him over and over again in 1987, no one cares about Bruce Springsteen anymore. And he did have a little bit of a lull in popularity. But in Javed's mind, it's like, I've got to get these tickets. They're going to sell out immediately. And it's like, bro, you can take a day.
Yeah. But I get that.
But I also get that concern.
This is what this movie, I think, did so well for me. It all starts as, I don't think that this is revolutionary if you've seen the film. It starts when he plugs that tape in for the first time. The night that he throws his poems out. Yeah, and he
happens to put it on.
He puts on the Bruce tape, and the world opens up to him in a different way. And I think that the way the film captures that moment of being a young person and hearing for the very first time art that connects with you on that level, that gives voice to all of the things that you've been feeling.
And that you don't know how to say.
Right. And it's so powerful. I love some reviews, I think, say that like the way that the lyrics are shown on the screen is like cheesy or something, but I love that.
That was great. That was a great editorial decision and a great directorial decision, because that's kind of what it's like when you hear certain songs for the first time. What was your song that did that to you?
What was the song that did that for me? I might have to think about it.
I want to say that, because here's the thing, I listened to like hip hop and R&B all of my life.
Right.
That's sort of because that's what was expected of me.
Yeah.
And then I started listening to 311, and then I transitioned from 311 to Metallica to Korn. But I think for me, it's a combination. It was either Green Day, The Ramones, or Rage Against the Machine. And if it was Rage Against the Machine, it was definitely Killing in the Name of.
That's a good one.
They told you. Yeah, and I think that was the song that really woke that, like, it's either it's between those three bands, and it might even be Pearl Jam to throw in a fourth.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe Pearl Jam was in my mix. I think of like Machine Head by
song.
Bush was one of those that was like it was just musically, it sort of like awoke me to something that was different, because I grew up in like I said, like a country and pop household. It was like a very safe musical household,
Right.
And I think honestly, Ben Folds is some of the earlier music that I discovered for myself, where I was like, this guy has something to say,
Right.
And it was interesting, and it was fun. Third Eye Blind, though, is probably the band for me.
Okay.
And like How's It Gonna Be was a great song off of that first album, but it was probably the Blue album that I was like, I think when I heard How's It Gonna Be and can I graduate? And like all of the
Okay.
like Third Eye Blind found me at the right age. You know what I mean?
Right. I think Creed found me. Higher hit me close. Higher hit me very hard
Yeah.
because that's a song about just you're trying to live in this dreamland,
Yeah.
but then you're forced into reality where you don't want to be.
Yeah.
Our Lady Peace hit me with Life,
Mm-hmm.
Superman's Dead, 4 a.m. Like a lot of early Our Lady Peace really hits me hard. Like that first album, that Superman's Dead's album, really gets to me all the time.
Yeah, it was for me. It was like post grunge because I was a little too young for grunge, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was when the rock music started to smooth out a little bit on the other side of that I like discovered it. And so, like Third Eye Blind, I think was definitely a band that I like sort of like latched onto during those ages, and that I felt like they were saying something to me, like for the first time.
Jumper
like,
spoke to me.
Jumper is a good one.
Me.
And yeah, I think Stephen Jenkins is a great lyricist as well. And like some of the deep cuts off that first album are like still some of my favorite songs.
Yeah.
Like Motorcycle Drive By, God of Wine. Like there's some great stuff there.
Yeah, Third Eye Blind they're one of those bands that should get a lot more credit than they do. I think Filter does amazing. Brett Scallion is still he's as passionate today as he ever was. And like Jesus or a Gun, I remember how controversial that song was, but when you really listen to it, there's so much more happening.
Yeah.
Like when you've really got to make that decision, are you going to fall back on your religion that you were raised to cling to? Or are you just going to find your salvation with the sword and end it? Like, oh my God. What kid wasn't trying to come up with a solution at that age in that time?
Yeah.
Gen X, man, Gen X and very, very early millennials.
Right. Like
we had some of the best times for music.
Early generation millennials.
Yes. That was some of the best time for music because
I mean, we all say that, right? Every generation says that.
Well, you know what's funny is that I was talking to my son about this last night, and I was even telling him, I said, you know what? I'm not trying to sit here and say that your generation's music sucks, because I'm not. Because your generational music is going to speak to you.
Right.
But when I was a kid, when I was your age, music, we didn't have the internet. So we couldn't go to these different little spaces for people to understand us where it came to politics or our feelings or whatever. What do we only have? Music.
Yeah.
And that's why music was so important. That's why music was so big for us. Now, music doesn't have to satisfy that urge because we've got the internet. And he goes, yeah, music of the day is just not the same as the old stuff.
Yeah. Similarly, I would argue that because there's not this like this cultural need to like identify with different kinds of people, mainstream popular music for the most part has sort of homogenized like to the center, like where everything sounds very similar if it's on the radio. And that's because traditional terrestrial radio is dying in a lot of ways, being killed by streaming services and satellite radio.
Yeah.
And the beauty of the internet is that not only now do you have these different communities that you can belong to and feel like you have a place, it also allows us, it democratized the act of creating art to the point that now you can find music that is specifically made for you. It just is harder to come by than it used to be. The good music is still there. It's just much harder to find.
Right. And I think that sometimes that music being difficult to find, it means so much more when you get it.
Yeah, for sure.
Because a lot of the stuff now, radio's trying still so hard to just be relevant.
Right.
So you're not getting you have to get that quick, snappy stuff.
Yeah.
It's sort of like one of the films that we're going to be doing on this Summer Song. That thing you do. I want something peppy. I want something snappy.
Yeah. Well, and think about it like this. A friend of mine, his name is Jeremy Smith. We've done some collaborations in the past. He's a composer, and we've talked a lot about how art is becoming like memeified, for lack of a better word. And so now, because so much revenue is generated by platforms like TikTok, pop music is being generated to cater to that platform. So if you listen to pop music now, it has like distinct moments that come out in 30 to 60-second increments that can be used in TikTok videos for dances or whatever. And so now you'll have something like if Ariana Grande or Drake puts out a song, you'll notice that like these 60 seconds and the next 60 seconds feel like almost two different songs because they're trying to generate TikTok moments, right?
Right. And that's kind of like, and that's why, like, I'm not a fan of TikTok. I never will be a fan of TikTok.
Yeah.
I was on TikTok for a little bit and just got so sick of it.
Yeah.
Because I don't like that quick, snappy, peppy, blah, blah, blah. I don't
Well,
like
I mean, look what we do here, right? Like the long form conversational sort of. I mean, this is much more what I prefer.
Absolutely.
You can get at the heart of things a little bit more. And like, I mean, pop music has always been the easiest version of music, right? Like to consume, right? Like you don't have to think about it. You can just let it wash over you. It's supermarket music, right?
Right. Yeah.
And
like when like some people, you hear "Can't Touch This" in the supermarket, it's fun.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely.
I prefer more like, if I'm going to use Hammer as an example, yeah, You Can't Touch This got you interested, so did Too Legit to Quit. But a lot of his stuff, I guarantee you, some of his stuff, some of the deep cuts on those albums are probably far better than those songs.
Yeah, and very different.
And very different. And, you know, all artists sort of have that, especially your first album is always, you know, the stuff that goes on the radio and blah, blah, blah. Then you have some of those deep cuts.
Yeah.
And once you have that level of popularity, then you start doing your own thing. Look at the difference between the Marshall Mathers LP and I can't remember the title of his second album.
Well, the Marshall Mathers LP was the second album.
Okay, My Name Is.
The Slim Shady LP was maybe the first one.
Right. And there's big
or the
differences
Eminem Show was that or was that later?
Probably. I think I can't remember, but
that first, the one that Marshall Mathers LP. I was thinking about this the other day. The Marshall Mathers LP is a fucking masterpiece.
That is probably the best of anything he's ever done.
And it's in the upper echelon of hip hop albums to ever be released.
Absolutely. If I were gonna go with a hip hop, if I were gonna really go
a Mount Rushmore hip hop,
Mount Rushmore of hip hop, that's definitely up there.
Yeah,
I'd probably put something by. I'd probably put either an album with Eric B. and Rakim up there. Some NWA, although my taste for NWA is sort of shifting away a little bit because I'm an East Coast guy.
Yeah.
So that's going to happen. A lot of my hip hop guys are going to be East Coast guys.
Yeah.
But anyway, but back to this. When he discovers Bruce for the first time and you're seeing the lyrics on the screen and then he rushes out in the storm.
Yeah.
To get his writings back. And I was yelling at the TV, don't do that. Because what writer as a kid hasn't done that?
Yeah.
Just destroyed what they've written. And I know
because they felt insecure about it or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I remember the one band that I was in, The Rendering. And when I got booted out of that band because our personalities just weren't the same, I threw a lot of my stuff away. I ripped them up, burned them, got rid of them.
Yeah.
And I really wish I hadn't. And honestly, and then when I left my band Faceless Fear after that, that's kind of when I just stopped. And I really wish I hadn't. Because I had so much to say.
Yeah, I loved, man, you know, he found support from unlikely places.
Yeah.
When his family wasn't quite there for him in that way, right? Well, I mean, his sister was supportive.
His sister was very supportive. His girlfriend, the girl that would become his girlfriend, was really cool. And I really liked the little subplot where her family was trying to make it like she was only just dating people to get a rise out of her.
Right.
And like just how clueless her parents were. Like, you want to talk about being Armitages. Those were the British. That was the British Armitage right there.
Yeah, for sure. They definitely lived in that neighborhood.
They really did. And they probably went to some of those parties too.
For sure. Yeah.
And then Haley Atwell, who, because I mean, and I was really, really grateful for this film because I had a cookout this weekend. And my chorus teacher and his new wife came.
Yeah.
So it was great to be able to introduce my son to someone that had such a huge impact on my life. That was a teacher. And just seeing how Haley Atwell Like she really took on the Paul Rudd in Perks of Being a Wallflower.
Yeah,
Like,
she's so good in this, and honestly, thank God for teachers like this
mhm,
that not only does, like, first of all, not she's not taking any crap off this kid, right? Like,
not at
she
all.
gave him a C. She's like, you weren't expecting that. She was like, the part in the middle where you talked about this other thing, like, that was so good because that was your voice. The rest of it, I want
Junk.
more of that other thing, right? Like, give
Right.
me more of Javid. And then when he finally brings his poems into her, and then he's like, oh, I'm just some guy, like, nobody's interested. And then the girl's like, I'm interested. Like, I
Right.
loved these little moments where, and like the elderly guy that lived in the same complex with them,
Yeah,
how
and
he,
he
like,
found his one poem,
yeah,
and his dad is expecting him to be mad, and he's almost in tears. He goes, I went away to war to fight Nazis, and now they're here.
right.
Keep it up.
Yeah, you've got something to say.
You've
I
got something to say.
loved it. I
I
loved it.
love seeing these little pockets of confidence being, these
Yeah.
seeds of confidence being planted in him. But he has to be the one to nurture it.
Yeah.
I love the fact that he met his best friend, and that's what got it started, and how it just grew.
I also like, so at the beginning of the film, he's writing lyrics for this guy who's like in like a Flock of Seagulls type synth band.
Tom and Baratheon.
Yeah.
And Baratheon he started doing his most laid back Joffrey before we got to understand him. How
Yeah.
him and Job, I love that little subplot. I love, yeah, he was about Flock of Seagull in it.
Yeah, but like whenever they have their like falling out, and Javid talks to the older
dad.
neighbor, right?
Yeah,
And he's like, really good friends deserve to be listened to.
right. And I think that's when Javid realized that music comes from everywhere. Just because something is important to you doesn't mean that something that isn't important to you isn't important to somebody else.
Right.
And I think that we as music fans need to learn that, because I get so mad at people. Like, that's why I refuse to go with the whole guilty pleasure when it comes to music. I refuse to be guilted about something that I like.
Right. Yeah.
Like, what if Nickelback speaks to someone?
Yeah.
So
they clearly do.
Right. But you want to talk about a band that gets more disrespected.
Yeah.
With more, name me a band from that era that has had as much longevity as them.
Well, and I don't even know where the hatred comes from. I'm not a huge Nickelback fan. Like, I can take them or leave them, but I don't understand like what they did. That I would much rather spend my energy hating somebody like Imagine Dragons, who I
would rather
saw
dislike that Friday.
Oh, well,
it's Friday.
You don't even have to spend any energy doing that. That was all like
Or
bullshit, anyways.
Paris
But
Hilton.
like Three Doors Down is another band that is I think similar to Nickelback in like their output and in their quality, but they haven't gotten the same amount of like flack for that.
No, because I think Nickelback in some way, I mean, not Nickelback, Three Doors Down is a little bit heavier, just a little bit heavier.
But they released the same song 5 times.
Right. Yes, they have.
I'm here without you, baby. Like, they just changed the words up a little bit, and they just released the same thing like 5 times.
You know I lost my puppy.
Right. But like at the same time, man, but that first Three Doors Down album was a banger.
Dude, that was on point. That was a hard.
And when you think about like they're like this, Three Doors Down, Maroon 5 is like this too, where like the latest stuff that they put out is completely foreign to the first stuff that they put out. The first Maroon 5 album, Songs About Jane, is one of the greatest rock albums of the last 30 years. Right. So good. Right. And then everything that they do after that is just radio drivel.
Right.
Same for Three Doors Down, though. That first album, so fucking good.
Banger.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, hey, man, we got to keep those royalties coming in.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
we can only write Kryptonite once.
Right.
But we can write Here Without You 5 times.
Yeah, or even Stained. Like, their first album was rugged. Break the Cycle was great. And then everything after that was the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, I would put Eve 6 in that conversation
Eve 6,
too.
Yeah, absolutely, Eve 6. And then there's some bands that came out around that time that just didn't have the longevity, like Splendor. They had one great song and then gone. Like,
Do you
it's
remember
like,
Fastball?
yes, I do. Was I out of my head? Was I out of
Yeah, but
my
then,
mind? I
but
love that
before
song.
that, that's a great song. But then what about, but where were they going without even knowing the way?
Yeah, that was a banger too.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, dude, that fastball. So that's why I love that movie Loser so much, because they had some of the best songs from
Yeah,
that era.
for sure.
Or even, I'm trying to think, there was a band. I can't remember the name of the band, but they had this song called "Breathing You In and I'm Breathing You Out." I first heard that song,
Oh,
and that I listened to that. That song was on every burned CD I made.
oh, what about that band live? There's
Oh,
another
I used to love live the
there.
American version of Our Lady Peace.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. The Dolphins Cry,
Oh man. They stood up for love.
right?
Lightning Crashes.
Yeah, it was that
Oh
Throwing
man.
Copper album like
Dude,
that.
Throwing Copper was a gem, bro.
Yeah.
That was a gem.
Yeah, we're just like getting off on our own like musical stuff
We
today.
really, but that's what that's what this
yeah,
movie does.
and that's what it made me think of. Like I said, like I loved watching this kid wake up to this, right? And like
Right.
have that moment. And I was like, oh my God, like every kid has that moment
Right.
where they find that artist that speaks to them in this
Yes.
way, and you feel
Yes.
more alive than you ever have before.
Absolutely. But the one great thing that I really love about it is that he's awakened, right?
Yeah.
But he also doesn't lose sight of who he is. He doesn't go along trying to just be someone he's not. He's Pakistani.
Yeah.
He loves his culture, but he's opened up the door for something
It
new.
shows him another way forward, right? He doesn't just have to like follow the orders of his father, right? Like it's that rock and roll rebellion that it wakes up in him, right?
And it's not even meant to be like disrespect your parents.
No, right.
It's just, follow your own
I just
path.
Want more. I want not even more, just different, right?
Right. Like I love the fact that his dad goes, "Are you sure he's not Pakistani? Work hard, be a good person, respect your parents."
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, and I think that's the point, right? Is because like what makes great art great is its ability to speak to the universal experience. And like, does like to a Pakistani guy, does Bruce Springsteen seem to express Pakistani values? Certainly. Yeah. But that's because those values should be universal. Be a good person, work hard, respect your elders, right?
You ever notice that all these things of our cultures that separate us, but what is the core value? Be a good person, work hard.
Yeah. And have mutual respect for each other.
And have mutual respect for each other. So why can't we ever just use that foundation? Right. Like, why are we so stupid that we let religion and politics get in the way?
Yeah. I was also, I mean, honestly, man, like I felt like I was watering up the whole time I watched
this thing. God, tears
the whole time, because
from
like
my eyes.
Springsteen's music is already so emotionally charged, and then to like recontextualize those songs inside of this new narrative gave them new power.
Right. Like, honestly, I went on Spotify and I just started adding all of Springsteen's albums to a playlist.
So good.
Because so good. I want to swim in that.
If you really want an experience, like a Springsteen experience, you need to watch the Netflix special. They recorded his one-man Broadway show.
Oh, wow. All right, I'm going to Netflix now.
And it's just him and an instrument and him telling stories. And it is so moving. It's just 2.5 hours of poetry. It's remarkable.
Yeah, I'm looking for it now. Bruce Springsteen on Broadway?
Yeah.
Add it to my list.
So good. So good. And like, so I think probably my all-time favorite Springsteen song is that Thunder Road song. And so whenever Thunder Road is playing in this movie, I'm like weeping. And like whenever the river comes on, I'm weeping. I'm just like
Born to Run comes on, I start bawling because that is my favorite Springsteen song.
Yeah.
Because just the music of it. The first time my bass instructor put that on and I was playing bass to it, I was crying while playing.
It's so good. Like this dude's lyrics are so good, and he's like accused of being wordy and stuff, and that's fair. Like, dude is probably a little wordy, but he's also super thoughtful, and he has something to say, you know.
And his words just get to you, and they get to you, and they speak to you, and they're just like
and
awesome.
in this film, Javid is uniquely positioned as a young person on the verge of like coming of age, growing up in a family that's struggling financially, working
Yeah.
class, all of that. Like he is uniquely positioned to connect with Springsteen's music. And I love the scene, even like the movie almost like dips into like musical territory a few times, almost.
Every so often. But when you're into your music,
It's like
don't
that.
you feel like that?
Yeah,
Like,
you see everything through that music, right?
yeah,
And
that's
especially
what,
when you're a young person, right? Like I remember, dude, I remember being a kid and like having the headphones on
and just singing
and just watching the world through that
through the
music.
music. Yeah. I
That
do
is a
that when
real
I'm
thing.
driving. I do that when I'm
Yeah.
driving sometimes. Like when certain moods hit me, I open my both front windows
Mhm.
and I just let it out because I feel
Yeah.
like I have to share this.
Right.
Because it's just like, honestly, because that's such a beautiful feeling that you want everyone to feel.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the
But
scene like whenever whenever the racist kids like make them move up from the table.
yeah, I hate I really wish I could throw punches at those
Yeah,
kids.
but then whenever they like get up and go over there and like start like letting them have it with the
Yeah,
lyrics.
yeah, and they try to keep his tape, and EJ just starts singing at him. Like, and what are you gonna do when two dudes just start singing at
I
you? What are you
know,
gonna
dude.
do?
I was like, this is like big dick energy on a different level now, you know?
Yeah, because my whole thing was, I was like, you know what? I'm ready to throw hands for you guys. But they're like,
For
no.
sure. No, for sure. Those guys were real dicks.
And
And
I was even angrier when when Javed is walking home, and that skinhead starts chasing him.
yeah.
Like, I really wish that I could have teleported and just be like, what?
Yeah,
What?
well, it is this we know is based on a true story.
Yeah. And I love that caveat at the end where
Yeah.
he's seen the real Javed. He's seen Springsteen over 150 times, and they
Right.
got pictures together, and
I
they're
love
still
it.
best friends. And Springsteen has even posed for pictures with him and his parents. Like,
Right.
dude, that just goes to show how awesome Springsteen is.
Well, Springsteen allowed his music to be used in this little indie film, you know? Like that's
Yeah.
because they couldn't have afforded
Not even a little.
like the licensing, not in the traditional sense. I'm sure he worked with them on that.
I mean, and I'll tell you what, man. Like, I do want to talk about a couple of things that irked me.
Yeah.
Not many.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
this really did move into a trope of the father and son
Mhm.
always butting head trope. And I get it. It's something that happens. But I mean, it really, I don't know, like when I see it in movies,
Mhm.
it kind of frustrates me because it's like,
Yeah.
can't we have a different sort of
It's interesting.
conflict?
This is an interesting point, and I completely agree with you in almost every single way. It is really hard to judge a story based on a true story
Yeah.
because he's not doing it as a trope, right? Like he's just doing it because
This
that's
is what
the way
happened.
this is how he lived his life. And like it feels tropey to us because we watch this happen in movies all the time, but like this is his real experience. And I feel like the movie is very different without that, right?
Yeah,
And
that's true because he kind of needs something to rebel against.
and it's not just the fact that it's him and his father butting heads, it's that he's butting heads with tradition.
Right. It's almost like he's going up against a Cerberus of his father, tradition, and the racial climate.
Yeah, it's a cultural struggle with his father as much as it's a familial struggle.
Right. And I love the fact that because that took a lot of courage for him to go to America without his father's blessing.
I know.
Number one. It's like, how did you get to go? Because most schools, bro, you got to have a parent's permission slip, don't you?
Well, he was already in college. He just wasn't at university, right? Like he was already.
I thought that was like high school.
But I guess
the college. But I guess the college aspect of it.
The college system in Europe is a little bit different. And also I'm sure like parental consent and all of that stuff is a little bit different too. If he was like 17 or 18, he could probably do whatever he wanted to do. Even if he was still in high school, you know?
Right.
But, and also like, who's to say like his mom didn't sign that slip if he needed somebody to sign it because she was on board with it a lot earlier than dad was. Right.
Very true. Well,
And
I
that
think she was
conversation that
also working so hard all the
yeah.
time. She didn't have time to be anti it.
Well, and the thing, like, I love the conversation that she had with the dad near the end, where she says, "Look, if you don't fix this now, we're gonna lose our son forever, and I will never forgive you for that."
Yeah. And even Brown was like, yeah, so quit being a douche canoe. And I was like,
Yeah,
and my whole thing was, and I'm looking at my son, and it's like, I'm so glad that I'm not like that with him.
right. Yeah,
You know, I want
yeah,
him to.
because his father, like, this is the trope. This is the side of the trope that we don't ever really get to see. It's the fact that his father is also struggling
Yeah.
with how to be Pakistani and how to be a father, right? Like, how do you
Right.
navigate those two things? Give your son what he needs in a changing world while still honoring tradition.
I also love the fact that we got that scene where he was vulnerable in front of his wife. Because you never get that
Oh
with some
God,
of
I
these.
loved that. Yeah, that was so. That
That
was
really
very
showed that
different.
character something. That
Yes.
showed me something different with that character. With
Right,
his
that he
father.
has to put on the brave face in front of the kids. And like when he was like weeping, I was like, "Oh man, that's really powerful to show
I
that."
loved it.
Right,
And I loved it.
and that's such a Springsteen thing too, because Springsteen, for all of his like factory worker denim jackets and all of that, this dude is not toxic masculinity. This dude is a vulnerable. He's a poet, right? Like he's an emotional guy, and to see that play out in the film in this way I thought it was very nice as well. And like even Javed, like giving his speech at the end, like just
And he's in
crying on
tears.
stage. Yeah, it was so powerful,
And
man.
he
I thought this
tries
movie
to
was incredible.
and he tries to back away when his father shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
he stands tall.
Yeah.
And I think that, and can I just, I really want to point out another bit of irony. If I
Yeah.
may, and I'm probably using the word wrong, and I apologize for that.
You're probably using it in an Alanis Morissette way,
Yeah.
which is really more like coincidence, but
Yeah. Isn't it coincidentally hilarious that nowadays you get these pundits on one side that are complaining about the loss of masculinity of men.
Right.
But meanwhile, you have a guy who in the 80s was the man. Like he was your blueprint for masculinity. And he's never been toxic masculine ever.
Never.
Isn't that hilarious?
Yeah, like when have you ever heard a bad thing about Bruce Springsteen?
I ain't heard nothing bad about Bruce Springsteen.
No, like of him like acting out, of him like he barely drinks. Like this dude, I mean, the dude is like in his mid 70s and still jacked all to hell. He's not living a hard life. Like he's not like doing drugs and drinking and all that stuff like a lot of rock and rollers do or did.
David
like
Roth,
he's taking good care of himself. He obviously he's mellowed out, you know, in his older age.
He's chilled.
But he's never. I mean, this is a guy that in the 80s he wrote these songs, "The River," "A Thunder Road." He wrote these songs that explore like men stepping up, trying to be the man that they needed to be for the people that they loved, never being overbearing, never being. And it's because if you listen to him talk about his father, it's because his father was more like that traditional like browbeater, right?
Yeah.
Like had trouble with substance abuse and all that, and I think that Springsteen learned a lot from that, you know.
I agree, and I really hope that my son learns from me.
Right.
I think all fathers, deep down, we want our children to learn from all parents, but I think especially fathers, we want our kids to look at us as a blueprint and then be better.
Yeah, that's it, right? Is you hope that you're doing right by your kids or whoever is looking up to you, right?
Yeah, whether it's your child, your niece, nephew, cousin,
your students,
your students,
like whoever, right? You hope that you're putting on like display like the right, you know, but the right way to be. But you also hope that they aren't just like you. You hope that they find a way to be better than you, right?
Right. Exactly.
And the toxic trait is when you don't want that part, when you think that you are the model and that everyone else should follow.
And if you seriously feel that offended that your child is a different person than you, that's a problem.
You're the problem.
Right. Like, case in point, when you look at Matt's dad.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I get why Matt's dad he's a funny kind of a character.
He is funny, yeah.
But you notice that little bit of toxicity when he's teasing the hell out of Matt for his music, and that hurts.
Yeah.
And then you see Javid, because he's finally able to connect with people, he sort of goes into that dick mode a little bit.
A little bit, yeah.
And then he learns, and then when he gets that sort of, when Mr. Evans sort of gives him that advice, and he goes back and goes, look, I'm sorry. I had no right. And then Matt is like, I think in that moment, Javid realized, and I think Matt realizes how much of a dick he was being to Javid.
Mm-hmm.
So now they understand each other on a better, even-keeled filter.
Yeah.
I think the only difference between them is that Matt had this kind of charisma, and he had more of a bravery than Javid did.
Yeah. You know, I was thinking that like this, I think one of the central conceits of the film is that it's that whole it takes a village thing, right? Like, because Javid benefits from like many outside forces outside of the home, right? And like, you never know when something that you do for somebody is going to have this just like life altering effect on them. Like with his teacher, or with the neighbor, or even with like Matt's dad, right? Like, it's all of these adults that sort of shape him into the man that he becomes. And it's all of their influences that kind of create the mold. And that's not to say that his family doesn't have the same effect on him, right? It's their influence coupled with all of this other stuff. And it's that, like, you know, no one grows up in isolation, right? We all
need people to help shape us.
Right. And we all need to pay attention to the things that we do for other people, because we are also shaping them as well.
Right. And I think that as we grow, those around us grow to mold. You know, we sort of mold a bit more, because I'm a firm believer that people are within your life for a season.
Yeah.
Whether it's one or several. And a lot of the times, to maintain that, we have to mold ourselves to that weather. We do.
Yeah.
And if you don't, then that's when you move on. Like, you and I have been through a lot together in the now almost 4 years,
right,
since we've been doing this. And as we've changed, we've sort of molded together to maintain. And in this film, you see a lot of that. It happens within his family. It happens with Matt. He sort of molds, as he matures and molds himself, other people sort of fit in. Think of them as Legos, for them to all connect together. Now, sometimes you might have to move a piece from inside to the outside. It don't mean it's a bad thing. They're still a part of your stratosphere.
Yeah. And then sometimes you realize you got a bad piece or the wrong piece, and you cut that one all the way out.
Exactly, because you have to.
Yeah.
You have to. This is a film that... This is probably the greatest film that we've done in a while.
I know. I was thinking about this because we both had a similar reaction to Once.
Yes, we did.
And I felt, watching this movie, watching Blinded by the Light, I felt very similar to how I felt when I watched Once for the first time.
Yeah, I agree.
But at the same time, this movie is like, it finds a way to be a little lighter. It finds a way to be about a lot more things. And like, there's more texture here, I think. And it was wildly compelling. It was the breeziest 2 hours I've watched in a little while.
I agree. And I'll tell you the truth. This is probably, like, with Once at a very close second, this is my favorite of the films we've done for this block of episodes.
I completely agree.
And I think that, like, honestly, and this is something that I really, 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 I want to present some new findings to the court, if I may.
Oh, okay.
I think that there are certain movies that we do that sort of transcend our rating system.
I agree with that.
I feel there are certain movies that belong in a particular place. Our own little Criterion Collection.
Oh, okay.
And I seriously I will put my vote behind Blinded by the Light to be the first entrant in this Plotaholics Criterion Collection.
I agree. I agree completely. I like I said, I haven't gotten like quote unquote emotional watching a movie in a little while, and this one like really did move me in a way that was completely unexpected.
Yeah, I like once moved me, but this moves me in a much different way
Yeah,
because this takes me back to being that kid in the
yeah.
'90s. This takes me
And
back to my
once it look
childhood.
when he puts that Springsteen tape in and hits play, from that moment till the end, like I am wrapped up in this story. Like
Absolutely.
it's good before that, obviously, but like at that moment, like the whole thing comes alive in a way that I just haven't seen other movies be able to capture that.
You know what it kind of reminds me of? You remember the first time? Remember the first time that you watched The Matrix,
Right.
and he takes that pill,
Yeah.
and just how the world looks different.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
That's what this movie does because this. I mean, I'm trying to think back, and like everything looks sort of like that typical dreary London, England, UK look. But then when he pops play, the light is
Right.
just subtly brighter.
It is.
Blinded by the lights.
Right. And in those scenes where like he's got the headphones on and he's like and everybody's dancing or whatever, right? Like
And
it
he's
does
listening
that.
to Bruce.
It's
Yeah.
brighter. Yeah, no, I completely agree with and stand by your choice to elevate this above the general shot rating system. So we won't even bother Bartender Smiley today.
No, I think Bartender Smiley can take a break. He can have a couple of shots for himself. This goes beyond the shot system. This goes right to the criteria.
It is transcendent.
It has transcended.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll brainstorm some things to maybe call this new collection of films. And yeah, no, this one is really special.
Yeah, it's really
It's one I can see revisiting. Like over and over and over again.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 110% because I think this is one of those movies that just.
It looked like Michelle was upset because she wasn't able to watch it, and it's one that she's wanted to see too.
Oh.
And I told her, I was like, I'll watch it again with you. And she's like, no, you'll already have seen it. And I can say right now, without doubt, I would watch this again tonight.
Because I guarantee you there's certain aspects of this thing we probably missed.
Yeah.
We probably missed a few things.
Yeah, I would watch it again now. And I just watched it a few hours ago. Like, it's so good.
It really is. This is a movie that just, you want to talk about a film that just will put you on and I'm sorry, if you watch this movie and you dislike it, where is your soul? Like, Did you trade it? Did you trade it to somebody? Did you make a deal with Crowley at a crossroads somewhere?
I mean, this thing, it does all of the things that you want good art to do.
Right. It entertains you, it inspires you, and it hits your feels.
Right.
I mean, this film is one of the this is also one of the most highly rated critical films that we've done.
It is, yeah. It's sitting at an 88% on the tomato meter with 260 reviews certified fresh and a 91% audience score. With only 2,500 ratings, which is really sad. Like, more people need to see this. It's remarkable.
I agree. And I really feel bad. This is one of the films that I think truly suffered in
because of the pandemic.
World. Yeah.
Yeah, it was released at Sundance at the beginning of 2019. But obviously at that point it's just kind of making the circuit, you know what I mean? Like, it's just making the film festival circuit.
Right. And I really feel like, I mean, this is a film that I really wish they would even like re-release it in the theaters.
Yeah, it was released.
Deserves it.
It received its wide release at the end of 2019, well, like in the sort of the third quarter in August of 2019. So it had a chance, but I feel like it's one of those movies. I kept thinking, we say this about a lot of these kinds of movies, that it'll have a second life as people discover it, and it being on HBO Max is good news because that gives people an opportunity to find it.
Right, absolutely. And I implore you, please.
Yeah, if you haven't seen this, please watch it. You don't have to be a Bruce fan to enjoy this movie.
No, you don't. But I mean, it doesn't even. I mean, it doesn't even so much help to be a Bruce fan. I think that if you're not a Bruce fan, you'll at least appreciate the music.
Right. Yeah. No, for sure. Then listen, just to sort of like tidy things up here, it was made on a $15 million budget, and it did make 18.1 at the box office, so it at least covered itself, you know.
Huzzah, huzzah, right there, baby.
That's what you want from an indie flick like this, for sure. But yeah, next week, Brian, we're gonna stay right in line with this like highbrow sort of storytelling as we get into Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny.
Well, wait, I thought we were.
Oh no, we did move that. We did move that. Yeah, we did push that. Yeah. So next week we're gonna do Get On Up instead.
Get up, get on up. Now this is gonna be difficult to watch because this is a Chadwick Boseman film, and where we've just sort of gotten the new trailer for the second Black Panther film, and I started crying during that. So it's going to be interesting watching Get On Up with Chadwick Boseman. So we are still not being facetious. Going to be
not being facetious, yeah, for
sort of be on that highbrow.
Yeah, for sure. So Get On Up next week, starring
Purple Rain.
Chadwick
Boseman, and then Purple Rain after that, starring Prince, and then That Thing You Do, and then we're going to sort of wrap it up, but sort of move into our September block. With
Jack Black Timber,
where we're gonna do Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny as we move into the Jack Black Timber. So it's gonna be
buckle up.
Buckle up. It's gonna be an interesting ride, my friends.
Yep. As always, I implore you, do rate, review, subscribe, tell your friends and family. Email us if you'd like. I don't really check it ever. But if you feel like yelling at us, that's probably a good place to do it. Check us out on the YouTubes as well. That's youtube.com/theplotaholics. But yeah, we will be back next week with Get On Up.
Take care.
Take a trip with us to Nilbog. Just promise not to drink the goo. Oh my God! If you get sucked into the Matrix, we will send a phone for you.
Do you believe in fate?
But every movie has a plot hole, and every hole gets filled somehow with whiskey, wine, or blue milk. Just don't cut me off right now. We're the Breakfast Club of two. We're the Plotaholics, ripping plots apart for you.
Yeah, well, that's just like your opinion, man.